My dad is engaged to my ex-girlfriend, but she didn't tell him we dated for 3 years. My dad, 38M, is marrying my 24F ex-girlfriend, 26F. This is all such a mess and I really don't know how I'm supposed to feel about it. For some backstory, my dad isn't my biological father. He and my egg donor started dating when I was 2 and got married when I was 4, and then got divorced when I was 16. Honestly, I was far closer to my dad than I was to my egg donor, and my egg donor would regularly abuse both of us. After the divorce, he tried to stay in touch with me, but my egg donor purposely isolated him from me because she was so mad that he finally became confident enough in himself to escape from her abuse. She was able to get a protective order placed on both of us to completely limit contact after the divorce, and then financially blackmailed me to continue to isolate me from him while she paid for my college. As soon as I graduated from college when I was 21, I completely cut off contact with her and reached out to him again. Even though it had been over 5 years since we last spoke at that point, I was very happy to have in my life again. My ex-girlfriend and I dated while I was in college. I was pretty low-key about the relationship because I was pretty sure if my mom ever found out I was a lesbian, she would also cut me off completely. We started dating when I was 18 and dated for almost 3 years. I also never told my dad about her, since we broke up only a few months after we reconnected. He did comfort me through the breakup, but he never met her or really knew anything about her. That brings us to last night. My dad and I have a standing dinner date for every other Wednesday, but we've both been busy for the last month, so I haven't seen him since before Thanksgiving. He told me that he would be bringing his girlfriend to tag along, and I have to admit that I was both sad because it wouldn't be just the two of us like it normally is, but also excited to finally meet her. Unfortunately, once I reached the restaurant, I'm absolutely floored to see my dad sitting there with my ex-girlfriend. I'm absolutely shocked to see them together, and when my dad introduces her to me, he introduces her as his fiancée, and tells me that he wanted me to be the first to know. Apparently they got engaged 2 weeks ago, but hadn't told anyone except for her parents, who I've even met before. I must have had a shocked look on my face, because he starts going into this whole thing about how he knows that I might be uncomfortable with him dating a girl who's so close in age to me and how the age gap concerned him too, especially because of my egg donor. Well, I would never compare him to her since she was literally a groomer who started dating her tutoring student when he was 17 and then married him when he was 19. The entire time I was talking to him though, I was staring right at my ex-girlfriend in complete shock. It ended up being way too weird for me, so I just told them that I needed to go after like 5 minutes. My dad texted me again today telling me how he was so sorry to ambush me with that information, and that he was sorry that it came off the way it had. He told me again that he understood if the age gap made me uncomfortable, but he hoped I didn't think he was some kind of creep for dating a woman so much younger than him. He then told me that he felt like he was truly happy for the first time in the last 20 years, and he hoped that I could come to accept this, even if it took me a long time. I, on the other hand, am just completely lost. I'm pretty sure he doesn't know that we dated, and I really don't know whether or not I should tell him. I don't have anyone to go to about this since he's literally the person I would vent to normally, so I just decided to let it out here. More info. Again, my dad is not my bio father. I've never met my bio father and never want to. My dad is my dad and that's it. I know I need to tell him. Of course, I do. It's a super awkward conversation, and I don't know how to do it. I really don't want to lose him again. I hated not having him in my life when I couldn't. But I think I'd have to take a step back if he actually married her. Also, my ex literally didn't speak at all. She was just silent and wouldn't even look me in the eyes. My dad was the only one who talked for the entire 10 minutes I was there. I also haven't talked to her about it. I haven't talked to her at all in like 3 years. I don't know. I talked about my dad a lot when we were dating, but it's not like they'd ever met, so I have no idea whether she knew before last night. Personally, I don't care about the age gap. I don't even think she's too young for him, or he's too old for her. Frankly, I think I'm even old enough to date a man my dad's age too. But he's the one that cares so much because I think he thinks that's why I was uncomfortable at dinner. He's also extra sensitive to it because of what my egg donor did to him. Edit, just clarifying again that my dad is not my biological father. My egg donor was a groomer and an abuser, but at least she didn't do that. Still doesn't excuse starting to date a 17-year-old at the age of 30, but whatever. Edit, I'm going to text my ex-girlfriend. I know most of you think she already knew or that she targeted him or something, but I just don't believe that. For one, my dad and I don't have the same last name, and like I mentioned in a comment, we look nothing alike since he is Asian and I am white. I also never told my ex that he was not my biological father or told him his name. Do people do that? I don't think I've ever even said my dad's name when referring to him. That's so weird to me. I just always called him my dad. The only thing I told my ex about the past was that my egg donor forced my dad away from me, and I didn't really talk about it besides that because it hurt too much. I did tell her when my dad and I started reconnecting, but our relationship was already pretty much ending at that point. Like I said, there wasn't really any animosity or anything. We just sort of fell out of love with each other. She initiated the breakup, but after talking through it, it was completely mutual. Anyway, since I don't know whether or not she knew, and I have no reason to believe that she was going out of her way to date my dad, I'm going to give her the benefit of the doubt and tell her that she needs to tell him, and that if she doesn't, I will. Also, some of you asked me why I haven't told him already and why I said nothing at dinner. I want all of you to understand how important my dad is to me. I had to lose him for so long, so I do treat our relationship with some extra care sometimes. I also feel extremely guilty about what happened to him. And I can't help but feel like it's partially my fault that he lost so much of his life. I'm almost certain that part of the reason he even stayed with my egg donor for so long was because of me. He was going through physical and emotional abuse on a daily basis, and a significant portion of it was to protect me from her as well. I'm pretty sure if he didn't love me as much as he did, and if he wasn't so scared how much worse my egg donor would treat me without him around to protect me, he would have left much sooner. I feel terrible about the idea of him being happy finally and me ruining it by telling him the truth. Update: my dad, 38M, is marrying my 24F ex-girlfriend, 26F. So, I wasn't really planning on making another post, but I've gotten multiple messages asking for one. And then I was scrolling through TikTok when I suddenly saw my post come up. It was actually bizarre. Since I've only had a handful of Reddit posts come up on TikTok, I remember that guy who played that weird song whenever he had sex with his girlfriend. Before, most of the messages were really nice, except for the handful of people who told me that I should have a threesome with my dad and my ex. Seriously, what is wrong with you people? Anyway, I figured I'd let you all know what's happened. Since things have settled down a bit, this is going to be pretty long. So in case you just want to know the conclusion, my dad and Steph, my ex, are no longer together. My dad and I are fine. And I'm looking forward to putting this all behind us. Now for the longer story. I would just like to remind everyone that my dad is technically my stepdad, but he's the only father figure I've ever had and I've always just called him my dad. So as I mentioned as an edit to my last post, I was planning on texting Steph. I did end up texting her, and like 5 minutes later, she called me. We talked for like half an hour, and she basically told me that she was just as surprised as I was, and that she had no idea my dad was also her boyfriend. She said she was still reeling and was planning on telling him soon, but didn't know how to do it. I already know that some of you are going to ask her how I believe this. To answer a few questions I saw in the post, my dad doesn't have social media except for LinkedIn, lol, and doesn't really have any pictures of me in his house. I also don't really use social media very much in an effort to keep the woman who gave birth to me out of my life. The only picture I've ever seen is one from my college graduation, and that one is just in his office. A lot of people also assume that Steph and I went to the same college. I did meet her while I was in college, but we did not go to school together. I honestly just assumed my dad didn't really talk about me all that much, especially since our relationship was still in the early stage of reconnecting. I will admit that the comments did sort of get to me, and they did make me kind of suspicious, but I decided to give her the benefit of the doubt. So at the end of the call with Steph, she told me that she was going to talk to him that night. I agreed, and stayed by my phone, but I never got a call from my dad, which I thought was weird. I called Steph in the morning and asked her if she'd talked to him. She said she had, and that he just needed some space right now. She said it would be best if I didn't talk to him about it. I thought that was really weird, so I decided to text my dad anyway. I asked him if Steph had talked to him and he said that they had. I asked him if he wanted to talk about it, and he said he would prefer not to, and that he thought it would be best if we just took a step back from our relationship. He said that he was really dealing with a lot, and this was all extremely hard for him. I have to say, I was pretty heartbroken when he said that, and it really got me thinking. A lot of you asked me if I'd be okay with my dad marrying Steph, and honestly, I really wouldn't be. I don't really like the idea of him dating anyone just because of how easily he's manipulated. I knew he had been in a relationship, but I'd always told him that I didn't really want to hear about it, and that all that mattered was that he was happy. So we never really talked about his romantic life. However, I realized that even if I wasn't happy about it, and even if I seriously hated it, I wouldn't want to risk losing my dad over it. He mattered way more to me. So, I decided I'd give him a day, and then went over to his place on Sunday. He looked pretty uncomfortable when he saw me, but I wasn't taking no for an answer, so he let me in. We sat in silence for a few moments, before I basically just told him that we needed to talk about this. He was pretty quiet and he was pretty much sitting as far as he could from me. So I told him that I really didn't want my previous relationship with Steph to change my relationship with him, and that I was okay with him getting married. He looked kind of confused and what being friends with Steph had to do with any of it. It was my turn to be confused, so I asked him if Steph talked to him. Again, he said she had, and he didn't really know how to deal with the information. It really seemed like he was tiptoeing around the subject and he wouldn't even look me in the eyes, so I finally just asked him what Steph said. She told him I was in love with him. That's right. This crazy manipulative, word I can't use here apparently, really told him that I had admitted my sexual attraction for him years ago. Apparently, her story was that we were friends, not girlfriends, just friends, when I was in college, and that we'd gotten really close, and I'd told her my secret. I was pretty appalled to learn that she said that, but I had told her about how the woman who gave birth to me had claimed that my dad and I had an illicit and inappropriate relationship to get the protective order. She knew that would be a sensitive topic for my dad, and apparently she encouraged him to take some space away from me. At that point, I was enraged. I couldn't believe she would really do something like that. After that, I told him the truth. I told him about how Steph and I had dated years ago, and how I was pretty sure she made all of that up so I wouldn't tell him. He believed me pretty quickly, especially when I showed him a picture of the present she gave me for our first anniversary. My dad didn't really say anything besides just apologizing to me over and over again and telling me how sorry he was for believing her. I told him it was okay and we just hugged it out. After that, he called up Steph and asked her to come over. I've honestly never seen him like that. He's normally such a happy guy, but the look on his face was terrifying. Steph did end up coming, and it looked like she knew what was going to happen because she was just staring at the floor. I won't lie, when I saw her, I really want to just rip her hair out of her head, but sitting beside my dad really helped me keep calm. My dad told her that he knew the truth. Steph apologized over and over again to both of us. Apparently, she had no idea that I was his daughter at the beginning of the relationship, and she didn't make the connection until they had been dating for over a year and had started discussing marriage. She said that she felt like it was too late at that point and that she felt like she couldn't lose him. That was apparently why she pushed back on the idea of meeting me, and why she really didn't want to have that dinner with me either, although she told him that it was because of the age gap and that she was afraid of me judging her. Apparently, she was the one who convinced him that I'd be really against the relationship because of the age gap. She said that she told him the story about us being friends and me admitting my fantasies about my dad to her because she hoped that it would keep the two of us apart. When I asked her if she was really going to ruin my relationship with my dad over a lie like that forever, she said that she was going to tell the truth once they were married, since she was sure he wouldn't want to go through a divorce again. Apparently she would never dream of separating us again. What a load of bullshit that was. Steph was crying pretty much the whole time, and getting all of the information out of her was like pulling teeth, but eventually we learned the truth, or at least as much of it as we could. She begged him not to end their relationship, but my dad was pretty much just done with at that point. That's when she really started going hysterical, and I swear she had a full mental breakdown. She kept screaming at me how I ruined her life, and I was honestly scared she was going to hurt me or my dad. Luckily she didn't, and she did calm down after a while, although she was still curled up on the floor. I felt pretty bad for her seeing her like that, but then I remembered what she tried to do and I just got angry all over again. I'm guessing some of my dad's neighbors called the police because they knocked at the door, asking about a domestic disturbance. My dad is really scared of the police because of how the woman who gave birth to me had weaponized them against him in the past, so I ended up going to talk to them. Steph tried to grab me as I walked to the door, but she couldn't even get herself off of the floor. I told the police that she was refusing to leave, and eventually they were able to escort her out. My dad and I were pretty shaken up about that, but we decided to try getting some takeout and watching one of our favorite movies together. We were pretty much hugged together the entire time and we fell asleep on the couch together. It really felt so good. I was just so happy. So that's that. Steph is officially out of my dad's life, and I have convinced him to change the lock so she doesn't try to get in here again. I've also tried convincing him to try to get a protective order against her, but he isn't willing to do that just yet. He's convinced that he's not going to be able to get one, so it would be a waste of time, but the woman who gave birth to me had done it pretty easily, so I figured there was a good chance anyway, especially with the police report I'm guessing the officers had to file. In the meantime, I'm going to stay with him, at least until he gets the locks changed. I told him I'd like to move in here with him once my lease ends in March, and he told me he'd think about it. Right now, I just want to be around my dad. I hope you're all satisfied with the update. I can't say I'm happy about everything that happened, but I am really glad that my dad and I are okay. I feel really bad about what happened, especially for my dad, but I think he just needs to take some time away from dating, especially because of how many times things have gotten messed up for him. He agrees, and he said that he thinks he'd just like to focus on work and building up our relationship as well.